Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Day One Day. So today we are going to talk about SSO via SAML. So the SAML is a security assertion markup language which simplifies federated authentication and authorization process for our users, identity providers, and service providers. SAML provides a solution to allow the third-party uh, systems, which is technically deployed within an organization, and it's a integration between IT provider, service provider, such as web application or SaaS-based products uh, from each other, which centralizes user management and provides access. SAML implements a secure method of passing user authentication authorization between IT provider and service providers. So when a user logs in into a SAML-enabled applications, the service provider requests an authorization from the appropriate identity provider. The identity provider authenticates the user credentials and returns the authorization for the user. As a service provider, the user is now uses the application. So SAML in the process verifying a user identity such as user ID, password, and if enabled MFA, or you can call that as an two-factor authentication, and tells the service provider what access to grant the authenticated user is. So let's look at our big picture on high-level architecture here, where we'll talk about more details. So if you see here, typically most of this SAML-based integrations happens over the providers within more related to a business relationship within the systems. Okay, and the user might require to use a specific or different credentials for each one. So mostly the backend might be of our identity provider might be the Active Directory system. So let's if I consider this is going to be a high level, three major actions is going to be. The first one is cause a disjoint user experience. Uh, it forgets generally user don't need to remember sign-in credentials when you're deployed within an organization. Okay, and also it exposes security vulnerabilities when a user leaves a company. Uh, so the account must be immediately deprovisioned. So SAML is another a good player when an account has been deactivated. Automatically, all his integration systems will be deactivated when you integrate with a third-party systems like a SaaS. Okay, and automatically the last but not least, it's a complicated user management, and especially administration doesn't need to revoke multiple accounts and multiple systems when you do this integration. So when you look at here, the big picture, three actors are here. One is a user, the other one is an identity provider, and the third is a service provider where you build your most of applications or SaaS apps. So most of these three actors are integrated, and two initiated SSOs can happen. One is a user calling in a service provider. Then service provider redirects the calls to identity provider, and you get an authentication. So we'll talk about, I'll show you exactly the sequence diagram, how it's going to be playing that role. So that is more user-based actions can happen. So for example, to get this as a service provider initiated SSO, where you can call that as a day one dot my dot salesforce.com is one of a public example. I can share that where when you hit that, you have a button there where you might have seen on a Salesforce systems, a lot of Salesforce systems. You click a button to log in through your employee or IDP provider access, which is for internal employees. if you're using a Salesforce, right? Or else you might have seen, if you're not used anything like a Salesforce, you might have seen another example is a sales SharePoint, where most of our people might have seen when you click on a SharePoint, you automatically log into a system. At the top right corner, you can see your profile or IT all the time in your browser. Okay, because that is going through a SAML-based authentications. And the next one, as part of we call as an INT provider initiated SSO. What does that mean is the user directly hits this URL. Then later, this URL has been IDP provider URL. Once the authentication is done, it will be sent back to service provider. That is a scenario where you do more for system administration roles. Okay. So let's see our first sequence diagram where we talk about service provider uh, initiated SSOs. So if you see here, the user is always reaching out to service provider first, where the user is hitting the URL, then callbacks in a browser. Then you are redirected to IDP. IDP gives you authentication back. Then after successful authentication, the call goes to a service provider. But the handshake here is an XML-based document. You can call that as a SAML, which you have all the user information, Active Directory groups. All this will be embedded within your XML document. Once that is done, the service provider accesses a token and verifies the information, and uh, they proceed based on the credentials has been provided, and the system will be used. Right? Now, let's see how this IDP initiated SSO happens is, you can see here from a user, you're directly hitting a IDP, this URL, you have a get an IWA token, which is a valid user, is also a SAML again, and you're direct going through SP. Because as part of this URL, you'll see a more like an admin, system admins will have that URL, because if a system like a Salesforce is integrated with an user base, always they have a j1.my.salesforce.com. But if you're going through as an admin role, they want to have a separate MFA token, because the separation of a duties, if you're talking between a user and a system admin role, that's where the place MFA has to be enabled, making sure that administrators are not doing the user activities. So that's why IDP is highly used at that point. So once it's come back, the service provider validates the information, XML token, which has all this credentials, summarization, you can call that. You have all the information, and once it's done, the system will act as an admin role privileges, whatever you have it in that XML document, what are the authorization privileges you provided, is going to be. So keeping all this in a sequence diagram, details, there are specifications also you have to follow when you're following SAML-based systems. And one of our spec, the initial spec created by for a SAML is a OSS open.org. They do have all this SAML 1.2 spec also. That was initially sometime long time back. But now most of our IDP providers like Okta, Ping, ForgeRock, or Microsoft Active Directory or One Login, everyone supports WAUth 2 as well as a SAML 2. Okay, and there are a few providers systems they transform, like you might have experienced Auth0 and all. Okta, they do a transform, translate SAML to Okta Auth 2 profiles. So that is where this is one of a spec documentation RFC already captured here. And what information has to be, the attributes were called out as a user ID and Active Directory groups that be considered as attribute types. So all this, there's a standard specification for them too. There is a RFC here. I do highly recommend go and look at this. And finally, not least, there is a RF 6595, which I highly suggest is look at SASL and GSS API mechanism for using for a SAML. All right, I hope you captured in this session, and about a SAML. I'll capture another, I'll document another scenario where which scenario you have to use a OAuth 2 and SAML. All right. I hope you learned something new, and I'll see you in the next video. I'll talk to you later. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.